A lone young man dressed entirely in black, his body covered in tattoos, walks through the dimly lit streets. As he moves forward, a black cat crosses his path, a sign he considers to be a good omen. He is Kiyoshi Harai, an exorcist who banishes the demons that threaten human lives. Despite his youthful appearance, Kiyoshi is a prodigy, having graduated as valedictorian from the Exorcist Academy at just 16 years old. His remarkable abilities earned him this title, making him the youngest exorcist to ever complete the rigorous training, and he was on his first assignment, but he was scared witless. Kiyoshi sits in a small, dim room, nervously perched on a chair. His first assignment as an exorcist has proven to be more challenging than he anticipated. What he initially boasted would be a quick job has now stretched into 3 grueling hours. He had confidently assured his clients that the exorcism would be over in seconds, but now he realizes how smug he had been. As the minutes tick by, Kiyoshi's fear grows, gnawing at his confidence. The only thing keeping him in the fight is the aura of superiority he projects, a facade driven by his fear. But even that is beginning to falter. Around the 2-hour mark, the demon he is confronting starts to make a face that fills Kiyoshi with anxiety. To make matters worse, Kiyoshi has an urgent need to use the bathroom. The demon, possessing the body of a cute girl, begins to drool excessively. Kiyoshi finds himself disturbingly intrigued by the sight, wondering if the demon's drooling is causing him to lose his sanity. The demon senses his fear and taunts him, asking if he is scared. The demon, floating menacingly above him, remarks on how tiring it is to remain airborne. Earlier, when Kiyoshi had challenged the demon with bravado, he must have been bluffing. Now, as the demon floats closer with a knife, ready to attack, it mocks Kiyoshi, calling him a pathetic exorcist for being afraid of a demon. The demon questions why Kiyoshi even bothered coming and told him to sit there and die. But then, something unexpected happens. As the demon prepares to strike, Kiyoshi begins to cry. His tears flow freely as he tells the demon that it doesn't have to be so mean. The demon pauses, taken aback, and asks if Kiyoshi is okay. Kiyoshi admits that demons are indeed terrifying and that now, with the tension broken, he can't stop crying. Curious, the demon asks why Kiyoshi doesn't just quit being an exorcist. Kiyoshi sighs and removes his jacket, revealing the intricate tattoo that covers his body. The tattoo wards off evil, a permanent mark of his dedication to his craft. He tells the demon that there is no going back now. The demon, in a rare moment of empathy, remarks that this is really sad. Kiyoshi shares his frustrations, lamenting that he can't even visit public baths because of his tattoos. The demon, surprisingly considerate, informs him that there are some places that allow tattoos. Kiyoshi's face lights up with excitement at this news. The demon then inquires about the tattoo on Kiyoshi's back, and Kiyoshi explains that it's meant to be ironic, a challenge to demons, as it bears the number 666, the devil's number. He asks if the tattoo is cringeworthy. To Kiyoshi's shock, the demon reveals that the tattoo doesn't actually say 666. Instead, it reads 777. Embarrassed and dismayed, Kiyoshi started to cry, and the demon felt bad for pointing out the mistake. Kiyoshi begins to slam his head against the table, and the demon urges Kiyoshi to stop, reminding him that self-harm is wrong. Later, Kiyoshi and the demon find themselves seated on a couch. The demon, casually revealing that life is full of surprises, confides in Kiyoshi about the challenges demons face. Kiyoshi, intrigued, asks if demons truly have tough lives. The demon affirms this, only to notice the girl he had possessed is now resting on her bed. Startled by his unexpected extraction, the demon jumps up. Kiyoshi reassures him that he managed the situation. The demon criticizes Kiyoshi's fearfulness, suggesting he could be stronger if he weren't so frightened. Kiyoshi counters, mentioning he's been dubbed the ultimate exorcist, which the demon realizes suggests Kiyoshi operates on an entirely different level. Curious, the demon inquires how Kiyoshi managed to do it. Kiyoshi explains that the demon's kindness had dispelled his fear. Kiyoshi admits he wasn't taught that demons could be kind, prompting the demon to remark that this would be quite an insult to some demons. Sighing, the demon said that he didn't want to do this sort of thing. He then introduces himself as Yamada. He reveals he works in the Demon Realm's Department of Water Resources. Kiyoshi is astonished to learn of such a department in the Demon Realm, to which Yamada explains that, aside from the demons, it's not so different from the human world. Yamada recounts receiving a direct order from the great demon Lord Mito to possess the girl, a coveted task among demons. Despite the envy of his peers, Yamada values returning home each day to ask, "What's for dinner?" He discloses that his eldest son just started junior high, and he still has 300 years remaining on his home loan. Turning to Kiyoshi, Yamada asks why he chose the path of an exorcist. Kiyoshi reveals that his parents were killed by demons when he was a child. Mr. Yamada asked if he wanted revenge, and Kiyoshi said it was just that he wants to prevent others from experiencing such trauma. That's why he wants to be the kind of exorcist who can protect people from any demon. Driven by this mission, he trained rigorously, mastering immense powers to become an exorcist, though he admits he has struggled to conquer his own fears. He doubts he'll ever become a truly effective exorcist. Yamada reassures Kiyoshi, stating that if Kiyoshi were his son, he would be immensely proud. He told Kiyoshi that he has what it takes to protect others, acknowledging that such a thing was not easy to achieve. He said that all Kiyoshi needs is just a bit of courage. Yamada advises Kiyoshi to take deep breaths when he's afraid, a calming ritual that surprisingly yields positive results. The two practice breathing together, and Kiyoshi, pleased with the effect, praises it as the best. Yamada is pleased to see Kiyoshi benefit from the technique. Noticing Kiyoshi's contemplative expression, Yamada asks if something is wrong. Kiyoshi admits he was merely wondering if his own father would have been like Yamada. Mr. Yamada was taken aback, blushing at Kiyoshi's unexpected words. He was a demon after all, but he didn't really mind the sentiment. He then told Kiyoshi to proceed with the exorcism, which shocked Kiyoshi. Mr. Yamada clarified that it wasn't out of pity. Rather, it was inevitable that a low-ranking demon like him would eventually be exorcised by someone. If that was the case, he'd prefer it be Kiyoshi. Tears welled up in Kiyoshi's eyes as he struggled to accept the request, saying he couldn't bring himself to exorcise Yamada. Mr. Yamada insisted that exorcising demons was part of an exorcist's duty. Kiyoshi, although aware of this, argued that if demons were monsters who harm humans, he saw none here. He told Mr. Yamada to go home, leaving the demon incredulous. Kiyoshi asked Mr. Yamada to pass along his regards to his son, which brought tears to Yamada's eyes. Embarrassed, Yamada turned away, attributing his teary eyes to age. As Kiyoshi prepared to report back to his clients, he and Mr. Yamada glanced at the girl. Yamada remarked on how he had caused her distress by possessing her for 3 hours and noted her strong resistance. Kiyoshi's attention was caught by a black goat in the room, and he wondered about its presence. Mr. Yamada fell to the floor, terrified, as the atmosphere shifted and the goat began to transform. The goat's transformation culminated in a commanding presence that ordered them to kneel. The goat's transformation was then followed by a massive explosion which sent Yamada flying. Yamada explained that this demon's appearance was connected to the dispatch order to find a high-quality soul resistant to demons. Kiyoshi realized that the transformed entity was the demon Lord Mito. Mito, though limited to a brief stay of 10 minutes, declared his intention to not only claim the girl's life but to wipe out everyone nearby. He approached Kiyoshi and started scrutinizing him closely. Mr. Yamada called out to Kiyoshi, but he was unresponsive, having passed out on his feet. Mito, annoyed, told Mr. Yamada to leave and wondered why a demon was trying to assist an exorcist. Deciding it was none of his concern, Yamada resolved to return to his family. However, a fleeting memory of Kiyoshi caused him to pause. He turned back, kicking Kiyoshi in the head, demanding he wake up. Yamada roared at Kiyoshi, questioning his resolve to protect people from any demon. After Kiyoshi regained consciousness, Mito confronted Mr. Yamada, who was sweating with anxiety, declared that while he was a demon, he was a father first. He shouted that abandoning Kiyoshi would mean he couldn't face his own family with pride. Mito, deeming Mr. Yamada defective, snapped his fingers, causing Mr. Yamada to be split in two. Mito vowed that he would purge Yamada's entire lineage because of what he did. The shocking sight left Kiyoshi in turmoil, flooding him with childhood memories. Kiyoshi struggled to move, feeling overwhelmed and questioning his training and purpose. Kiyoshi wondered why even now he couldn't do it. Mr. Yamada's comforting touch and encouragement to take deep breaths gave Kiyoshi a glimmer of hope. Tears streamed down his face as Mito prepared an attack and blasted him from behind. Mito managed to blast a huge hole in the house, and after his attack he declared that humans were too fragile and he can never adjust his power for it. With Kiyoshi now seemingly obliterated, Mito turned his attention to the girl. Before Mito could make his next move, something unexpected happened. Kiyoshi caught Mito's attack, condensing the black ball of energy in his hand and then crushing it effortlessly. Mito was taken aback, clearly not expecting such power from Kiyoshi. Mr. Yamada, watching the scene, was equally surprised that he was still alive after everything that had happened. Kiyoshi, taking a deep breath, walked forward with newfound resolve. As he did, he reflected on how Mr. Yamada had helped him realize something crucial. He thought to himself, I should have known all along. What's scarier than some demon is losing someone who matters to you. With that thought fueling his determination, Kiyoshi turned to Mito, his voice steady and full of resolve. Bring it. I'm going to exorcise the hell out of you. Mito, unimpressed, said Kiyoshi was just bluffing, prepared an attack called Triple Black Ball. Kiyoshi, instructing Yamada to protect the girl, readied his own attack, Moonrise Kingdom. The attack, launched as Artemis, pierced through Mito's black ball and struck his head. Mr. Yamada was surprised to see that Mito got his head blown off. Mito, though briefly shocked, regenerated and praised Kiyoshi's efforts. Kiyoshi followed up with an attack named Hades, which blasted off Mito's upper body. Yamada was astounded by Kiyoshi's strength, questioning if he was indeed the strongest exorcist ever. After Mito regenerated his body, he said that he has never been made such a fool of, and he likes it, so Kiyoshi should show him more. It then dawned on Mito that Kiyoshi seemed a bit too strong. Kiyoshi, standing firm, stared down Mito with unwavering determination. Mito, still reeling from the earlier encounter, couldn't help but voice his disbelief. What's up with this crazy power? Mito muttered to himself. I've been alive for around 500 years, and I've never met an exorcist this powerful before. He looked at Kiyoshi, trying to decipher where this newfound strength came from. Where does your strength come from? Mito asked, half in awe and half in frustration. Boasting about his own dominance as a demon lord, Mito prepared to face Kiyoshi with renewed interest. Kiyoshi, undeterred, performed another attack, Fiat Lux, creating 3 magic circles around Mito. He declared that no matter the challenge, he would keep protecting others. Mito asked what Kiyoshi was as Kiyoshi released the attack, and Kiyoshi affirmed he was Kiyoshi Harai, and he was an exorcist. As the scene shifts to a serene setting, we see workers repairing the damaged house while the family inside shares a moment of joy and relief. Kiyoshi and Mr. Yamada sit on a bench nearby, watching the peaceful scene unfold. Kiyoshi, with a sincere expression, turns to Mr. Yamada and says, "Thanks for everything." He then asks, "Are you going to be all right? You did just defy a demon lord after all." Mr. Yamada grins and nods. "I'll be fine. Besides, demons are pretty chill about that kind of stuff." Mr. Yamada chuckles but then grows more serious. "I still can't believe you're actually that strong. But defeating Mito, one of the 13 demon lords, there's no way the rest of them will just sit by. They'll be coming for your life." Kiyoshi gets up and stretches, saying, "I'll figure something out. Thanks to you, Mr. Yamada, I figured out something important. If I ever get so scared that my knees give out, I'll just take some slow, deep breaths." This touched Mr. Yamada, who smiled warmly and said, "That's the spirit." The scene then transitions to Kiyoshi walking down a quiet street, talking on his phone. The person on the other end apologizes, explaining that they didn't expect a demon lord to show up. Kiyoshi, with a calm demeanor, replies, "No problem. The person acknowledges Kiyoshi's newfound confidence in facing a demon lord and informs him that he'll be assigned to Naraku City, as he wished. "We're counting on you," they say. "Sure thing," Kiyoshi responds. His name is Kiyoshi Harai. The 777 inscribed on his back is a sign that he is ready to take on a demon lord. He drives out demons who harm humans. The Exorcist prodigy is the strongest history has ever seen. His bloody feud against demons begins now. Later, at the Memento Forest Cathedral, the gathered exorcists were addressed by an elder who spoke of courage and protection. Those who manage to graduate from the Exorcist Academy are assigned posts based on their abilities. For exorcist skill decides everything, no exorcist gets to choose their work except for one. The top graduate, who had recently exorcised Mito during his last job, Kiyoshi Harai, was told to step forward. Excitement filled the room, and students eagerly awaited Kiyoshi's appearance. Some admired him as a superstar, with one noting that he was on the verge of achieving the highest rank, Cross Paladin. They anxiously waited, but no one stepped forward. The old man shouted for him to step forward again, but still no one came forward. Unbeknownst to them, Kiyoshi was running late, having overslept after staying up all night because he was nervous after hearing that the top graduate was going to get called up. In the morning, he got sleepy half an hour before it was time for him to leave. He figured he could just lay down for a minute or two, but that was his fatal mistake. Since all of his lessons were private and he skipped a bunch of grades at the academy, he had hoped to finally make friends. When he stopped running, he thought that if he kept that pace, then he would get there 5 minutes or so. His attention was then caught by an old lady trying to get some fruit which fell from her. He stopped to help, so this delayed him further. At the cathedral, the old man grew concerned over Kiyoshi's absence and decided to proceed. Sosuke Hitsuji, a graduate from a distinguished family, asked where he was going to be assigned, as another person told him to take down his legs. If not for Kiyoshi, Sosuke would be the top of the class. He was very unlucky for this to happen to him. As the door opened, the old man thought it was Kiyoshi, but a black dog appeared, followed by a huge explosion. The demon lord Sada emerged, demanding Kiyoshi Harai's presence as retribution for Mito. Sada vowed to devour Kiyoshi's soul. The old man informed him of Kiyoshi's absence, which surprised Sada, who thought Kiyoshi would have definitely showed up to the important service. The old man said it's inconvenient for him as well. While they spoke, an exorcist fired an exorcism bullet, hitting Sada's head. As the attack was ineffective, Sada asked what that was supposed to be and said that the attack must be a little hissy fit. Sada unleashed a devastating attack, a massive wave of energy that tore through the surroundings with terrifying force. He sneered as he observed the destruction, reveling in the chaos he had caused. "Now that," he declared, "is what an attack should be like." Surveying the devastation, Sada's expression grew even darker. "I wonder," he mused aloud, "just how many people I'll need to kill to make him show up. 100, 200. His eyes gleamed with malice as he contemplated the carnage. Or perhaps every single one of them would do. Just as Sada reveled in his twisted thoughts, he was abruptly struck in the head by a forceful blow. The impact was sudden and precise, snapping his attention to the one responsible. As the figure approached, a voice filled with irritation cut through the tension. "Always Harai this and Kiyoshi that." "Huh?" the figure said, irritation evident in his tone. "I'm getting real sick of it." Sada turned to face his attacker, a sneer forming on his lips. "Looks like at least one of you has a bit of backbone," he growled. It was Sosuke. He told the headmaster to take care of the injured persons and erect a barrier to protect the surrounding area. Stepping forward to confront Sada, flanked by the other 3 graduates. "We're going to exorcise him," Sosuke declared with unwavering resolve. The 4 exorcists, united in their cause, prepared to engage Sada in battle. They were determined to bring down the powerful demon lord, no matter the cost. Sada, unfazed by their resolve, let out a low chuckle. "Ignorant brats," he muttered, amused by their boldness. Sosuke lay on the floor, his body battered and bloodied, every breath a struggle. Sada loomed over him, a twisted grin on his face, clearly having enjoyed the battle more than he'd anticipated. "That was pretty fun," Sada admitted. his voice dripping with dark amusement. More fun than I expected, actually. He paused, looking down at the defeated exorcist with a curious gleam in his eyes. Tell me, what's your name, Exorcist? Sosuke, despite his weakened state, summoned the last of his defiance. My name isn't something I'd willingly tell a demon, he spat out, refusing to give in even in the face of near defeat. As Sada prepared his next attack, he told Sosuke that those were some bold last words. Sosuke's thoughts raced. He couldn't believe that Kiyoshi had managed to exorcise a monster like this before. As Sada's attack was headed towards him, his classmates' voices rang out in panic, screaming his name, their worry palpable as they watched in horror, unable to do anything to help. Sosuke's heart pounded in his chest as he didn't want to die there. Not like this. Not at the hands of this demon. Kiyoshi appeared out of nowhere, blocking Sada's attack just in time. Everyone was stunned to see him, and Kiyoshi, with a calm demeanor, apologized for being late. The atmosphere shifted as excitement filled the air with his arrival. Sada recognized him and thought back to their previous encounter, wincing internally at the memory of Kiyoshi breaking every bone in his arm. Kiyoshi was confused about the situation. He wondered what a demon lord was doing there. Sada smirked and revealed that he had been waiting for him. Kiyoshi started to wonder if it was all his fault, but he quickly dismissed those thoughts as what mattered now was the safety of his classmates. His anger flared as he realized what the demon had done to them. Kiyoshi turned and handed a mandarin to Hitsuji, confusing him. Kiyoshi then took a deep breath, focusing his energy, and activated a powerful technique called Lux Gladius. A sword materialized from the energy in his hand. Sada, seeing the intensity in Kiyoshi's eyes, taunted him, claiming he wouldn't let Kiyoshi have his way as he did with Mito. But before he could react, Kiyoshi dashed towards him at lightning speed, slashing Sada into pieces in an instant. Sada's shock was evident as his body fell to the ground in fragments, utterly defeated. The students were left speechless, unable to believe that Kiyoshi had one-shot the demon lord. Sosuke, who had been moments away from death, was momentarily stunned but quickly regained his composure. He refused to thank Kiyoshi, instead vowing that one day he would surpass him and become the highest-ranking exorcist, a cross-paladin. Kiyoshi admired Sosuke's ambition, thinking back to the rumors he had heard about his strength. Despite his own power, Kiyoshi respected Sosuke's fearless determination to assert himself in front of everyone. He really admired that, deep down, Kiyoshi hoped that they could become friends. In the end, Kiyoshi's tardiness was overlooked, but he still felt a pang of loneliness as he realized he hadn't managed to make any new friends, despite everything that had happened. This is Kiyoshi Harai, an exorcist with extraordinary talent. Despite being a newcomer, he has already managed to defeat 2 demon lords. His request to be assigned to Naraku City, an exorcist outpost, surprised many, but Kiyoshi had his reasons. The scene shifts to a bustling restaurant where a man is diligently serving customers. One of the patrons asks where Akari is, and the man, Mr. Sakaki, responds that she's attending a lecture or something similar. Another customer suggests that Mr. Sakaki should hire more staff, but he firmly states that his restaurant is meant for a small, highly skilled team only. He then presents the customer with their order, demonstrating his dedication to quality. Mr. Sakaki approaches another table, chiding a girl for taking pictures instead of eating. Just then, the phone rings, and he answers it, only to be informed by the Exorcist Association that a mid-level demon has appeared at Naraku City's M Park. They demand that he take care of it immediately. Mr. Sakaki, frustrated by the interruption during peak hours, tells Diego, the other employee, that he has to step out for a delivery. Diego, equally frustrated, questions if Mr. Sakaki is serious about running the restaurant and jokingly threatens to kill him. Mr. Sakaki tries to placate Diego by offering to bump his pay to 100 yen an hour for the day, which excites Diego enough to agree to handle the restaurant while Sakaki is away. As Mr. Sakaki rushes to his motorcycle, grumbling about the bad timing, Kiyoshi suddenly appears from behind, casually mentioning that he has already exorcised the demon. Mr. Sakaki, startled, instinctively attacks Kiyoshi, trapping him with an arm that shoots out from the ground. He demands to know who Kiyoshi is, shocked that he didn't sense him approaching. However, Kiyoshi easily breaks free from the demon's arm, surprising Mr. Sakaki further. The demon beside Mr. Sakaki warns him to be cautious, noting Kiyoshi's strength. Mr. Sakaki thought that if he hesitates then he might lose this battle. Before Mr. Sakaki could strike, Kiyoshi reveals his identity, which causes Mr. Sakaki to pause in disbelief. Upon recognizing Kiyoshi, Mr. Sakaki's demeanor completely changes. He excitedly rushes over, marveling at how much Kiyoshi has grown and lamenting how long it's been since they last saw each other. The demon, now bored with the situation, retreats as it becomes clear that this is a reunion rather than a battle. Realizing that he was supposed to be expecting Kiyoshi today, Mr. Sakaki quickly decides to close the restaurant for the rest of the day, eager to catch up with the young exorcist. Now inside the restaurant, Mr. Sakaki asked Kiyoshi if he was hungry, to which Kiyoshi nodded. As they began catching up, Mr. Sakaki commented on how much Kiyoshi had grown, estimating it had been 6 or 7 years since they last met. He inquired about the granny, and Kiyoshi responded that she was still alive and well. When Mr. Sakaki asked if her training was tough, Kiyoshi shuddered, indicating he didn't want to think about it. Curious, Mr. Sakaki asked why Kiyoshi chose to come to this out-of-the-way place, especially when he could imagine many exorcist posts would be fighting over him. He pointed out that, with a bit more experience, Kiyoshi would likely go down in history. Kiyoshi, however, turned the question back on Mr. Sakaki, asking why he had come all the way out here, throwing away the highest rank an exorcist could achieve, a cross-paladin. Mr. Sakaki shrugged it off, saying it wasn't about him. Kiyoshi, feeling it was unfair, explained that he never intended to be a big deal and that the location didn't matter. He emphasized that there aren't more or less important exorcists and that after much thought, he decided that if he ever became an exorcist, he wanted to work with the person he owed his life to, which was Mr. Sakaki. Touched by Kiyoshi's words, Mr. Sakaki playfully called him a cutie patootie, and Kiyoshi added that the other reason was because he was super shy. He said that he would never be able to cut it somewhere that he doesn't know anyone. Teased him about mumbling, wondering if that was seriously the real reason for his choice. Setting aside his skepticism, Mr. Sakaki acknowledged that it was good Kiyoshi came. Kiyoshi, suspicious, asked if there was a powerful demon in the area. Mr. Sakaki explained that there was another exorcist working at the restaurant. Kiyoshi asked if it was Diego, and Sakaki said he was just a part-timer. The other exorcist was busy and hadn't come in that day. He warned Kiyoshi that a fierce battle awaited him. He asked Kiyoshi if he was ready, and he said of course he was. Mr. Sakaki revealed that most exorcists live and die in obscurity, but 5 years ago, he opened the Gates of Hell Chinese restaurant due to his love for Chinese cuisine. The restaurant's unexpected boom in popularity left him overwhelmed, leading to him skimping on customer service. Ironically, this only made the restaurant even more popular, with customers lining up outside every day. As a result, Mr. Sakaki admitted that he could barely consider himself an exorcist anymore. He then thanked Kiyoshi for helping with the dinner rush, much to Kiyoshi's surprise, who thought he was there to assist with exorcisms, not kitchen duties. Diego shouted at them to stop talking and get to work, prompting Mr. Sakaki to assign Kiyoshi to the kitchen to whip up some tension. Kiyoshi, flustered, admitted he couldn't cook it. Mr. Sakaki insisted that dealing with the unexpected is part of an exorcist's job and challenged Kiyoshi's skills by questioning what kind of exorcist he was if he couldn't even make tension. Kiyoshi, determined to repay Mr. Sakaki for saving his life, decided to push his limits and make the dish. Kiyoshi quickly got to work, chopping ingredients, cracking eggs, and frying everything up in a pot. He proudly presented the dish in front of an elderly customer and Mr. Sakaki, announcing that the tension was ready. However, Mr. Sakaki immediately noticed that it was just a regular omelet over rice and pointed out that this was a Chinese restaurant, questioning why Kiyoshi made it like that. Embarrassed, Kiyoshi admitted he got carried away. Just as Mr. Sakaki was about to redo the order, The elderly man took a bite of the omelet rice and was delighted by the taste. Other customers, overhearing, started requesting the same dish, even though it wasn't typical for a Chinese restaurant. Diego, still busy in the kitchen, urged them to stop gawking and keep cooking, while Mr. Sakiki, amused, wondered how he would handle the restaurant's growing popularity. He acknowledged that Kiyoshi's creation had inadvertently added a new item to the menu, one that quickly became a hit. Mr. Sakiki told Kiyoshi that he will be depending on him from here on. And so, the omelet over rice, newly added to the Gates of Hell specials menu, sparked an explosion in popularity. As the night at the Gates of Hell restaurant wound down, Mr. Sakiki praised Kiyoshi for his hard work. He then mentioned the other exorcist he'd talked about earlier. Kiyoshi, curious but calm, asked about them. Mr. Sakiki revealed that he intended to pair them up. Kiyoshi nonchalantly replied that it didn't matter who they were, as it wouldn't change what he had to do. Just then, the door burst open, and a voice exclaimed, "I'm so sorry, Sakiki." Mr. Sakiki grinned, saying, "Ah, speak of the devil." The newcomer, a young woman, explained that her lecture had run late. Noticing Kiyoshi, she excitedly introduced herself as Akari Jagasaki and expressed how much she looked forward to working with him. Kiyoshi was taken aback. It was a girl. His mind raced, unsure how to handle the situation. To mark Kiyoshi's assignment to Naraku City, Akari suggested a toast. Mr. Sakiki apologized for having Kiyoshi's welcome party at the restaurant, but Kiyoshi assured him it was fine and appreciated the gesture. Kiyoshi observed Akari nervously, noting that ever since he was little, he'd been fully devoted to his training. Even at the Exorcist Academy, he skipped grades and took private lessons, which left him with zero experience interacting with girls. He'd imagined his exorcist partner to be an old man, but now he was faced with a cute girl, making him wonder how he could possibly focus on exorcisms. Akari introduced herself again, emphasizing that she was 20 years old and led a regular life as a college student. Despite this, she proudly mentioned that in terms of active exorcist experience, she was Kiyoshi's senior by 2 years. She encouraged him to call her whatever he liked, though Kiyoshi couldn't imagine calling her anything but Miss Akari. Mr. Sakiki said that she had graduated last in her class at the Exorcist Academy, which led her to end up in Naraku City. Mr. Sakiki asked her if she liked it there, and she enthusiastically agreed. The two of them started to celebrate, displaying a camaraderie that left Kiyoshi feeling like an outsider. He envied their easygoing dynamic, thinking to himself that Mr. Sakiki was quite the playboy. Realizing he was out of cigarettes, Mr. Sakiki announced he was going to buy some, leaving Kiyoshi in a panic. He didn't want to be left alone with a girl. Feeling completely out of his depth, Kiyoshi decided to keep stuffing his face to avoid talking. However, Akari noticed a grain of rice on his cheek and gently removed it, leaving Kiyoshi even more flustered. He wondered if this casual, friendly vibe was just how college students were, and he even speculated if Akari might be a succubus, questioning whether he should exorcise her. Akari then complimented Kiyoshi, calling him the ultimate exorcist. She confessed that she often felt like a total loser, constantly getting in Mr. Sakiki's way. Her family was well known, but they had no expectations for her. Despite her lack of talent, she still wanted to protect people, even though she could only manage low-level demons. She admitted that sometimes she wondered if she should even be an exorcist. Apologizing for her outburst, Akari explained that she was just tipsy. Kiyoshi, trying to comfort her, shared that strength was important, but what exorcists needed more than anything was a bit of courage, something he had been taught recently. He began to encourage her, but before he could finish, he noticed that she was crying. Suddenly, she hugged him tightly, calling him a nice guy and her adorable little junior. She vowed to keep doing her best, leaving Kiyoshi utterly shocked that she had actually hugged him. Akari then revealed that she did have one special ability, demon foresight. She explained that she could sense when and where a demon was going to show up. Suddenly her hair stood straight up, indicating that a demon was near. In a panic, Akari started running around, while Kiyoshi tried to calm her down, but she insisted that they had to go. Suddenly, an explosion erupted on a rooftop, signaling the appearance of a demon. The high-level demon, Kobayashi, made his entrance, laughing maniacally. "I finally made it to the surface. Now I'm gonna eat a ton of souls and get even stronger." The demon declared that his favorite snack was the souls of children. This demon must be a minor attracted person. As Akari hid from the high-level demon, she was panicking, realizing she had rushed ahead and left Kiyoshi behind. She knew she couldn't handle a demon of this caliber and thought about retreating to find Kiyoshi. But before she could act, a small voice interrupted her thoughts. A little girl was standing nearby, asking what Akari was doing. Akari was startled to see the child, and before she could react, the demon noticed the girl and dashed towards her. The little girl screamed in terror, but Akari quickly leaped into action, managing to save her just in time. Though she knew she was no match for a high-level demon, Akari remembered Kiyoshi's words about courage. She steeled herself and vowed to protect the girl, no matter what. The demon was surprised that an exorcist had arrived so quickly. Akari fired an exorcism bullet at the demon, but it had no effect. The demon, amused by her weak attempt, sneered at her. He mocked her strength and suggested that the soul of a weak exorcist was worthless to him. He said that he would just have to kill her. The demon blasted her off the building. As she fell, she despaired, knowing she couldn't protect the girl. The demon, confident in his victory, declared that it was over. Kiyoshi appeared behind the demon, his presence powerful and commanding. "It's over for you," Kiyoshi said coldly. In an instant, he unleashed a devastating attack called Moonrise Kingdom Hades, tearing the demon in two. The demon had no time to react and was obliterated by Kiyoshi's power. Akari, still in shock from the events, was relieved to be saved, but also discouraged by her inability to defeat the demon. She pouted, lamenting that strength was what truly mattered. Kiyoshi, trying to reassure her, insisted that it wasn't just about strength. He pointed out that, without her courage, the little girl would have certainly died. Akari blushed at his words, feeling slightly embarrassed but also grateful. "Ah, shucks, if you're gonna say all that, then I guess maybe that's how it is," she said, finally accepting that her bravery had made a difference. Kiyoshi smiled, glad she was starting to believe in herself. "Anyway, nice work, Kiyoshi," Akari said, her spirits lifted. "Yeah, thanks for that," Kiyoshi replied, both of them sharing a moment of camaraderie as the danger passed, and they prepared to face whatever came next. Kiyoshi found himself in a situation he hadn't anticipated. Mr. Sakaki had just told him that he wanted Kiyoshi to enroll in high school, and despite his initial surprise, the idea slowly started to excite him. Akari was fully on board, encouraging him with talk of high school fun and even joking that he might get a girlfriend. Sakaki, with his usual carefree attitude, emphasized that being an exorcist was dangerous and unpredictable, so Kiyoshi should take the chance to enjoy his youth while he could. He even promised to pack Kiyoshi lunch every day. Kiyoshi was excited by the idea of living like a normal teen. When he became an exorcist, he thought he'd never live life like that and he couldn't wait to experience it. The next day, Kiyoshi was sitting in a high school classroom, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. His anxiety crept up on him as the day passed, and by lunchtime, he realized that he hadn't spoken to anyone yet. Desperate to make friends, he tried to approach a group of boys, but he quickly left and sat back down as he couldn't talk to them. He then hyped himself up, determined to talk to the next person who walked through the door. But when two girls entered, his courage failed him, and he slumped down, feeling defeated. Just as he was about to give up, someone startled him. "Hey, are you that new transfer student, Harai?" The boy was surprised by Kiyoshi's reaction and said that they would be sitting next to each other. He said that Kiyoshi had cool hair. He introduced himself as Nian Sanzagawa, and for the first time since arriving, Kiyoshi had a proper conversation with someone. Nian explained that he worked delivering newspapers to help with household expenses, as his mother was in the hospital. Kiyoshi, touched by Nian's responsible nature, immediately wanted to be his friend. But before he could seize the moment, Some other boys came up to Nian and invited him to the cafeteria. Nian extended the invitation to Kiyoshi, but Kiyoshi, too nervous, turned them down. As they left, he berated himself for missing the perfect opportunity. Suddenly, a demon appeared before Kiyoshi, surprising him. Ready to deal with the situation quickly, Kiyoshi was interrupted by the voice of the demon who told Nian that he found Kiyoshi, and he came rushing back to find him. To Kiyoshi's shock, the demon wasn't attacking anyone. It was talking to Nian. Kiyoshi, curious, asked if they were friends. Nian replied with a laugh, saying they were stuck with each other, whether they liked it or not. The demon reacted, saying it sounded harsh when Nian put it that way, and they quickly ran off to go eat. As Nian told him to join them for lunch, he suddenly froze and asked Kiyoshi, "Hold on, you can see this guy?" Kiyoshi confirmed, but started to wonder what was really going on. Nian introduced the demon as Jack Joe, his mysterious friend whom only he could see. Kiyoshi wondered, is Nian really friends with a demon? Nian began to explain, "I think it was about 10 years ago. I was walking down the street when I found him stuck in the ground. He had no memories of anything. I tried asking around, but it seemed like I was the only one who could see him. Also, we got along really well. After that, we stuck together through thick and thin every single day. I know this probably sounds crazy, but Jack Joe is like family to me." Nian added, "I didn't know you felt that way." Jack Joe replied, "Don't you start." Nian responded. Nian was curious why Kiyoshi could see Jack Joe, and when Kiyoshi revealed that he was an exorcist, Nian and Jack Joe were equally confused. When Kiyoshi confirmed that Jack Joe was indeed a demon, the realization hit Jack Joe hard. He cried out in disbelief, while Nian laughed and said he was glad to finally know what Jack Joe is. He casually reassured him, saying that it didn't matter what he was. Jack Joe was still his friend. The two shared a heartwarming moment, with Jack Joe offering to do all the chores as a token of gratitude. Jack Joe then turned nervously to Kiyoshi, begging him not to exorcise him. Kiyoshi, sensing no malice from the demon, assured them that he wouldn't. He acknowledged that there were kind demons in the world and he told them to come eat with him. Nian and Jack Joe, relieved, hugged Kiyoshi in thanks. Kiyoshi decided that as long as he kept an eye on things, it should be fine. As they sat down to eat, Nian and Jack Joe were amazed by Kiyoshi's lunch. Kiyoshi explained that he was staying at a Chinese restaurant, and the two were impressed by how cool that sounded. Despite the strange turn of events, Kiyoshi found himself bonding with his new classmates. We now switch scenes and see Sosuke deep in thought, wondering if he'll really find a demon lord in Naraku City. Nian is fast asleep, but Jack Joe, his demon friend, suddenly wakes him up with a cryptic message about his awakening being at hand. Nian panics when he checks the clock and realizes it's after 9. Jack Joe points out that Nian's late, which frustrates Nian since Jack Joe hadn't woken him earlier. Jack Joe explains that he just woke him up and reminds him that he shouldn't nap after delivering the morning papers. Nian hurries to get ready and insists they need to get going quickly. As they prepare to leave, Jack Joe mentions that he hopes Kiyoshi, their new friend, will be there today. As they head out, Nian starts narrating a bit about himself. He's a second-year student at Naraku High, and Jack Joe has been his close friend for years, though no one else can see him. Nian only recently discovered that Jack Joe is a demon, thanks to Kiyoshi, who's an exorcist. Still, Nian trusts Jack Joe, believing that demons, like humans, can be good or evil. Nian adds that Kiyoshi promised not to exorcise Jack Joe, and that despite Kiyoshi looking a bit scary, he's actually very kind. Jack Joe brings up their visit to Nian's mom in the hospital, excited at the thought of seeing her again. Nian is amused by Jack Joe's affection for his mom and brushes it off playfully. However, just as they're about to continue, two men appear before them. One of them, clearly the leader, tells his companion, Sosuke, that they've found who they're looking for. Sosuke agrees. Jack Joe immediately becomes suspicious, wondering if these guys are debt collectors. But Nian quickly realizes the truth. They're exorcists. As tension rises, the story shifts to Kiyoshi, who's waiting at school, hoping to see Nian and Jack Joe again. Kiyoshi reflects on how being friends with them makes him feel like a real high schooler. He overhears some students talking about how they saw Nian running around earlier, moving as fast as lightning. The focus then switches back to Nian and Jack Joe, who are now in serious trouble. Jack Joe gets injured, and Nian is deeply concerned. They try to escape, but one of the exorcists catches up with them. He attacks Jack Joe, sending him to the ground, and Nian screams out in horror. Desperate, Nian begs the exorcist to stop, fearing that Jack Joe will be killed if the attack continues. The exorcist mocks Nian, calling him an idiot and revealing that Jack Joe isn't just any demon. He's one of the highest-ranking members of the 13 Club, a group of powerful demon lords. Nian is stunned, but before he can react, the exorcist grabs him and tells him to stop talking. This exorcist is Tsurugi Hijiri, a cross-paladin from the Knights of Light, the highest-ranking order of exorcists. Sosuke, the exorcist's companion, aims a gun at Jack Joe and said that he couldn't fool them. Jack Joe tries to defend himself, insisting that he doesn't remember anything about being a demon lord, but Sosuke didn't believe him. As the situation escalates, Nian throws himself onto Jack Joe, pleading with the exorcists not to kill him. Nian swears that Jack Joe hasn't hurt anyone and begs for mercy. Sosuke said that he doesn't know what's going on between the two, but they have a job to do. Tsurugi isn't swayed, though, and he slams Nian's head to the ground and said that he talks too much. Jack Joe was worried about Nian, and Tsurugi mocks Sosuke for wanting to become stronger while having such a lax attitude towards their mission. Tsurugi then prepares to settle things. Nian, with tears in his eyes, pleaded desperately, his voice trembling. "Please, we've always been together. He's not a bad guy. He's my best friend." Hearing those words, Jack Joe began to cry. Tsurugi wasn't moved by the display. He glanced at Nian, his eyes cold and unforgiving. "It seems this one's been brainwashed," Tsurugi said, dismissing Nian's words without a second thought. And he said that he will have to eliminate Nian too. Suddenly, Jack Joe manages to land a powerful attack on Tsurugi, sending him flying. Sosuke is surprised, but Tsurugi, while shaken, is far from defeated. He grins, seeing Jack Joe's true form finally emerge. Tsurugi got excited to face him. Jack Joe growled at them and prepared to attack. Sosuke grabbed Nian to run for cover while Tsurugi starts preparing a powerful attack called Blade Runner. As the two were about to clash, Kiyoshi arrives out of nowhere and blocks the clash between Tsurugi and Jack Joe. He apologizes for being late and reassures Nian and Jack Joe that everything will be okay now. Both Sosuke and Tsurugi are shocked to see Kiyoshi there. The title of Cross Paladin represents true, unparalleled power. It's a rank so rare that only 5 people in the entire world have ever been granted it. With this title comes immense authority, far surpassing any other within the exorcist hierarchy. A cross paladin has the freedom to make judgment calls with unmatched latitude, decisions that no one dares to question. But it's their strength that sets them apart. A cross paladin possesses the raw power to exorcise a demon lord single-handedly, a feat that most exorcists could only dream of attempting. As Kiyoshi stands between them, his mind raced as he tried to grasp the situation unfolding in front of him. Why is a cross paladin here? And what the heck happened to Jack Joe? He couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Don't tell me. Was he actually a demon lord?" he said. Jack Joe was about to attack, but Kiyoshi sprang into action and restrained him. Before he could catch his breath, Tsurugi approached, clearly displeased. He told Kiyoshi that he was a branch office exorcist and demanded to know what he was doing. Kiyoshi, trying to reason with him, insisted that Jack Joe wasn't a bad guy, but Tsurugi wasn't having it. He said he didn't have time for nonsense and asked Kiyoshi if he was ready to face the consequences if he continued to interfere. Kiyoshi replied that he was. Tsurugi sighed, clearly unimpressed. He remarked that he had heard a lot about Kiyoshi Hirai, but Kiyoshi had turned out to be a disappointment. Tsurugi said he wouldn't blame Kiyoshi for not realizing Jack Joe was a demon lord. After all, they had left him unchecked for the last 10 years. But if Kiyoshi stood in his way, he would kill him. Before Kiyoshi could react, Sosuke punched him and knocked him to the ground, pinning him down. Sosuke demanded to know what Kiyoshi was thinking. He reminded Kiyoshi that he had already chosen a trash posting like Naraku, and now he was telling them not to exorcise a demon. Sosuke accused Kiyoshi of interfering with their work and assisting a demon, which could get him dismissed as an exorcist. He also emphasized that Tsurugi was with Concordia, the Knights of Light, the Exorcist Association's most powerful unit, and Kiyoshi had no right to defy a cross-paladin. Sosuke concluded that he had misjudged Kiyoshi and that Kiyoshi didn't have what it took to be a cross-paladin. Suddenly, Jack Joe broke through his restraints, his aura surging. Kiyoshi and Sosuke were both shocked. Sensing the danger, Tsurugi readied himself. In an instant, he unleashed an attack called Clayum Solace, slashing at Jack Joe multiple times. Despite the onslaught, Jack Joe pushed through and landed a powerful punch, sending Tsurugi flying. Tsurugi merely chuckled as he stood, saying he was all warmed up now. With a smirk, he launched another attack, Bamung, piercing Jack Joe's chest. As the dust settled, Tsurugi noticed something shifting in the air, and Jack Joe came crashing to the ground. Sosuke muttered to himself, astonished by the power Jack Joe was displaying, noting that lesser demon lords like Sata and Mito didn't even compare. He couldn't believe Jack Joe was holding his own against Mr. Tsurugi. Just as Jack Joe was about to attack again, Nian rushed in front of him, pleading for him to stop. Sosuke couldn't believe his eyes, wondering what Nian was doing. Nian desperately tried to reach Jack Joe, reminding him that they were supposed to visit his mom in the hospital and that Jack Joe had been looking forward to it. He told Jack Joe that he wasn't himself right now, and he didn't want to see him hurt or hurt anyone else. Nian's heartfelt words cut through, and to everyone's surprise, Jack Joe actually stopped. Tsurugi sneered at the scene, unimpressed, and prepared to strike again. Just as Tsurugi's sword swung down, Kiyoshi leapt in and blocked the blow. Tsurugi unleashed Clayum Solace once more, but Kiyoshi blocked it again. Nian looked worried, but Kiyoshi reassured him that it was fine. Tsurugi narrowed his eyes, asking Kiyoshi why he wasn't using his exorcist techniques. He then kicked Kiyoshi hard, but Kiyoshi held his ground. He accused Kiyoshi of not taking him seriously and questioned what Kiyoshi thought he could achieve like that. Breathing heavily, Kiyoshi explained that he didn't want to lose anyone, and he didn't want anyone else to, either. He said that he had trained to protect everyone and that he wasn't about to give up. Tsurugi scoffed at Kiyoshi, accusing him of being a failure as an exorcist for wanting to protect a demon. Kiyoshi admitted that it was messed up, but those two, Jack Joe and Nian, were his friends. And as a person, not an exorcist, Kiyoshi said he was going to protect his friends. Nian was deeply moved by Kiyoshi's words. Tsurugi sighed and told Kiyoshi that he just kept disappointing him, and he wasn't needed. With that, Tsurugi prepared to strike Kiyoshi again. Both Nian and Sosuke watched in horror as Tsurugi's blade descended, but at that moment, Jack Joe threw himself in front of the attack, taking the blow meant for Kiyoshi. Everyone stared in disbelief. The demon lord had protected an exorcist. Jack Joe, his voice weak, thanked Kiyoshi for everything. He said he was fine now and admitted that he didn't belong here, but that was okay. He reflected on how the last 10 years had been a blast. But if there was one regret, it was not getting to visit Nian's mother in the hospital one last time. Jack Joe thanked Nian for everything, saying he was super happy. He then spoke to Kiyoshi, asking him to take care of Nian, mentioning how Nian overslept a lot, wasn't that smart, and could be stingy. With those last words, Jack Joe's body collapsed, and Nian screamed out for him to get up. Seeing all this unfold, Kiyoshi erupted with anger, and his powers surged out of control. Tsurugi's eyes widened in shock as Kiyoshi's aura became menacing. Tsurugi smiled, finally seeing the power he had expected. He remarked that Kiyoshi should have started with this. Kiyoshi asked if he was satisfied now. Desperate and emotional, he begged him to stop. Tsurugi coldly dismissed Kiyoshi's pleas, telling him he was far too soft. Before Tsurugi could deliver another blow, someone interrupted the battle. A shot rang out, blasting Tsurugi's sword away. The familiar voice came from none other than Mr. Sakaki, with Akari by his side. Kiyoshi was shocked to see them. Even Tsurugi was surprised. Sosuke couldn't believe it either, recognizing the exorcism bullet's power and realizing who had fired it. He muttered in disbelief, noting that it was the living legend Sakaki, a man even the cross-paladins respected. Tsurugi demanded to know what Sakaki was doing there, reminding him that he didn't have the right to interfere with Concordia's business and was just a branch office manager now. Sakaki, unfazed, said he wasn't there to interfere. He just came to help out his people. When Tsurugi asked what he meant, Sakaki smiled and revealed that Kiyoshi, Nian, and the others were the Naraku branch office's newest exorcists. Tsurugi looked visibly confused, his eyes narrowing as he tried to piece things together. Mr. Sakaki, ever calm, explained that Kiyoshi had told him about his new friends, mentioning that one of them might have been using a powerful demon. He admitted that he never imagined it would turn out to be a demon lord. Turning his attention to Nian, Sakaki asked if he was willing to form a contract to save Jack Joe. Nian, desperate to help his friend, agreed without hesitation, saying he'd do anything to save Jack Joe. Sakaki began the ritual, his voice steady as he uttered the incantation. I make this offering and am silent, in the name of Tenma Sakaki. This pact of blood and ghouls is sealed, the exorcist's contract men in black. Carpe diem. As the contract was sealed, Jack Joe coughed up blood, his body visibly weakened. Sakaki looked at them and said they could talk about the details later. Tsurugi, watching this unfold, commented with a sigh, noting how Sakaki hadn't changed in years. He still doesn't listen. Sakaki then apologized for the misunderstanding, explaining that his delayed report had caused quite the confusion. He also vouched for Kiyoshi, saying he was only trying to keep his teammates safe and hoped Tsurugi would cut them some slack. Tsurugi wasn't so easily swayed. He pointed his sword at Sakaki, clearly unconvinced, and expressed doubt that he would let this go. Sakaki, however, kept his cool, saying that despite Tsurugi hurting his people, he was still trying to settle things peacefully. But Sakaki admitted Tsurugi had really pissed him off. Tsurugi sighed and finally called off the conflict, telling Sosuke they were leaving. As he turned to go, Tsurugi mentioned that this was a one-time thing, giving Sakaki a pass. Sakaki, appreciative, said he owed him and added that Tsurugi should tell Big Bro hi for him. Sosuke, ready to depart, made a show of dropping something on the ground. It was the Hitsuji family's all-purpose healing holy water, capable of healing both people and demons. With exaggerated dramatics, he pretended to lament dropping it, all while knowing exactly what he was doing. He hoped someone would pick it up and use it, especially since Kiyoshi and the others needed it. Akari watched this terrible act unfold, her inner thoughts dripping with sarcasm as she questioned how bad his performance could get. Grateful, Kiyoshi shouted his thanks, and Akari quickly poured the healing holy water onto Jack Joe, hoping to stabilize him. Sakaki turned to Kiyoshi, his tone more serious now. He asked Kiyoshi what his plan had been if he hadn't shown up. Kiyoshi, clearly feeling guilty, apologized. Sakaki reminded him that as an exorcist, his job was to protect people, and dying to protect a demon would defeat that purpose. He acknowledged that the Knights of Light were only doing their job, but pointed out that what Kiyoshi did had been for personal reasons. This, Sakaki said, made Kiyoshi a failure as an exorcist. The words stung, and Kiyoshi felt his heart sink. But before the despair could set in, Sakaki continued, telling him that anyone who would follow the rules instead of protecting their friends wasn't just a failure as an exorcist, but a failure as a person. Sakaki praised Kiyoshi for his restraint and bravery, telling him he did well. With a smile, Sakaki rubbed Kiyoshi's head affectionately, making Kiyoshi tear up. Kiyoshi, overcome with emotion, thanked Sakaki. Both Nian and Jack Joe rushed over, embracing Kiyoshi tightly. Nian expressed his gratitude, saying he didn't know what would have happened without Kiyoshi's intervention. He called Kiyoshi their savior, his words full of sincerity. Kiyoshi, trying to hold back his tears, said he was just glad that both of them were okay. Sakaki interrupted the heartfelt moment, suggesting they head back to the gates of hell. Akari, thinking ahead, groaned about how mad Diego was going to be when they returned. Sakaki shrugged it off, asking the group if they were hungry and playfully suggesting they ditch school for the day. The scene then shifted to the Gates of Hell restaurant. Kiyoshi, Nian, Jack Joe, and the rest of the group were seated at a table, enjoying a meal together.